Back from Philadelphia in front of the helmet with some major 49ers news. The team is opening Fred Warner's practice window today. So he's going to be out on that field with his teammates 93 days after fracturing and dislocating his ankle at Tampa Bay. Against all odds for Fred Warner. Jerry Rice, back in that 1997 season, it was 106 days in between his ACL tear in Week 1, August 31st, and his return against the Denver Broncos on Monday Night Football, where he scored a touchdown on December 15th. We don't know the date where Fred Warner will return to the actual game field for certain yet, but the 49ers are shooting for the NFC Championship game, which means that they have to win this weekend at Seattle because they don't expect Fred to be ready to play a game yet against the Seattle Seahawks, who are already talking some crap. Uchenna Nwosu commented on Fred Warner's Instagram post saying, "The road ends here, brother," implying that the Seahawks are going to beat the 49ers this weekend and that Fred Warner will not have a chance to return if the plan is indeed for him to be back in game day uniform the following week.
Yeah, I think that's all like wrestling, I guess. Just fake entertainment. And if it distracts someone or gets them out of preparation or something, or they lose their emotions during the game and they make things personal or something, then of course. But I think everyone's just having fun.
Okay, so it is incumbent on the 49ers to build a bridge back to Fred Warner. More on Fred in a bit. I'll even include some audio from Kyle Shanahan so that you can get the full context. But first, important news on Ricky Pearsall, who is now listed as a limited participant in practice for the 49ers. He did not practice throughout all of last week with the PCL issue, and the team is not technically practicing today. As I said, only walkthrough. But if there were a full-speed practice, Pearsall would be out there. That is why they've listed him as a limited participant. So a step in the right direction for Ricky Pearsall. I've talked about it a lot. I think the 49ers, in order for the geometric math to work against this best defense in football, the Seattle Seahawks, they need Ricky out there. There's no coincidence that he tipped the game back in Week 1 with his big catch over the top against Reek Woolen that set up the Jake Tonjes touchdown a little bit later in the drive. They didn't have him against the Seattle Seahawks, and maybe it surprised the 49ers that they didn't have Ricky Pearsall in Week 18. So they hope to have him when they head up to the Pacific Northwest on Saturday. That's a situation that we're going to monitor throughout the week. Then there is the case of George Kittle. Obviously, the 49ers will no longer have him this season, but George is going to undergo surgery to repair his torn Achilles tomorrow on Wednesday. So I'll have an update for you on that front after it is all said and done, and hopefully it goes well so that George Kittle can begin his rehab process and shoot to return for the 2026 season. Other news from the 49ers injury report, and remember that this is based on the supposition of a practice. It's not based on an actual practice today since the team is resting. No practice for D. Winters. No, he has an ankle issue that goes back to the Seattle game. No practice for Jair Brown, who pulled his hamstring in Philadelphia. No practice for Luke Gifford, who got hurt in Week 18 against Seattle with the quad injury. Dominic Pooney listed as limited with an ankle issue. Keon White remains listed as limited with groin and hamstring issues. He fought through both of those to deliver a 4-pressure game. He led the 49ers in pressures against Philadelphia. Keon White, the 49ers trade acquisition, outperformed Jalen Phillips, Philadelphia's trade acquisition. 49ers fans were complaining about Jalen Phillips going to the Philadelphia Eagles at the deadline. They sent a 3rd-round pick for him. Well, he had 3 pressures, and the Eagles are eliminated. Keon White had 4 pressures, and the 49ers aren't eliminated, and the 49ers only spent a 6th-round pick on Keon White. They still have that 3rd-round pick for 2026 in their back pockets. So it looked like John Lynch outfoxed Howie Roseman on that one. Ricky Pearsall, as I said, limited today, and Yetur Gross-Matos also limited at practice, or if there were a practice, he'd be limited for the 49ers today, along with Trent Williams. Both of those expected. Yetur dealing with the knee. He's managing that situation, and Trent is dealing with the hamstring. He played through it remarkably only 2 weeks after the injury happened, and he wasn't 100%. He gave up 6 pressures against the Philadelphia Eagles, and now he gets to face probably an even better front in the Seattle Seahawks but the 49ers will hope that Trent Williams is able to take another step forward in his recovery before Saturday. I asked Kyle Shanahan, we could circle this back to Fred Warner in the middle linebacker position. The 49ers are now on their fourth Mike linebacker of the season in Eric Kendricks, and he was fantastic for San Francisco on Sunday in Philadelphia. And Kyle Shanahan had a really interesting note after the game where he said, before I even knew Eric, I felt like I knew him based on just watching silent tape and preparing for defenses where he was the Mike linebacker. And I wanted to know exactly what Kyle Shanahan meant by that.
Just when you watch a guy all week and then you play against him and you can just tell whether it's mental or natural feel, like they know how to flow with the quarterback. They know how to just melt into where the ball's going. Fred Warner is as good as anyone at it. But that's why I brought up I wanted to hire someone like KJ Wright, who I didn't know because I felt that way about him. I knew D'Amico, but felt that way going against D'Amico. There's some guys who are so elite at that, like Luke Kuechly was unbelievable at that. Sean Lee was unbelievable at that. Just guys who seem like they have a natural feel for how the quarterback's rhythm is, how your offense's rhythm is, where they can predict things pre-snap, and they can always find a way to make the quarterback throw it right to them.
By the way, news from around the NFL, Mike Tomlin fired today by the Pittsburgh Steelers. 19 years with Pittsburgh, and he gets canned after the bad loss last night to the Houston Texans. Crazy stat about Mike Tomlin, and probably related to the fact that the Steelers haven't had much of a ceiling, although they've had a performance floor under him for the past decade or so. Only one coordinator under Mike Tomlin ever ascended to become an NFL head coach. That was Bruce Arians, who was the offensive coordinator for Pittsburgh. But Mike Tomlin does not have a robust coaching tree, and again, that's probably very, very related to the fact that Pittsburgh seemed to top out at about 9 wins, even though they did make the playoffs very, very consistently. The fact that Tomlin is gone makes Kyle Shanahan the second longest tenured coach in all of football. Only Andy Reid, who's been with Kansas City since 2013, has been with his current team longer than Kyle Shanahan. Now, Shanahan is tied with Sean McVay. They both joined their respective teams, the 49ers and the Rams, in 2017. Coming up on a decade. Year 10 is going to be next year for Kyle Shanahan. That also is year 10 for George Kittle in the NFL, year 10 for Kyle Juszczyk with the 49ers, although Juszczyk was with the Ravens before on his rookie contract. So Juszczyk is an NFL lifer at this point. Fred Warner, it's big news. So is this game coming up here against the Seattle Seahawks. Probably no Fred for that, but again, the 49ers are trying to build that bridge back to Fred Warner, and maybe the Seahawks are giving them a little bit of extra motivation in that regard, because Uchenna Nwosu is saying, the road ends here, brother. You're not going to get back on the field, and it's up to the 49ers to defeat the odds and find a way to get this to a place where Fred Warner is out there in uniform on game day. But boy, what a story it's been already. Just the perseverance that he's shown to get it to this point, rehabbing 6 hours a day, doing swimming. He told me that he's working with the San Jose State swimming coach, and we've seen how fast he's moving in the water. That's especially impressive to me since I like doing a lot of that swimming. Well, Fred Warner has stopped at nothing to put himself into this position. He's going to be back out on that practice field at a walkthrough tomorrow, back out on the practice field, and then we'll see if and when Fred Warner can get out there on game day for the 49ers. But for the time being, middle linebacker is in good hands with Eric Kendricks. All right, hit that subscribe button. We'll talk to you guys very soon.
We're activated. We're opening his window so he can do some stuff like that. But again, we're not doing much, so he'll walk through out there with us today and things like that. But hoping he can be ready for next week.
You did have the post. He's ready whenever. Obviously, he's a player. He wants to play. But do you have to hold him back a little yourself, or how do you kind of approach a situation like this?
Approach it by what doctors tell me. I mean, I'm like Fred. If he feels good and tells me he's good, I'm probably going to think he's good and trust him to get out there. But you can't always think with your heart and emotionally, And so you ask doctors where he's at, all the things that these guys have to pass, just protocols that we have in with just sprinting and jumping and things like that. And he's got to hit all those before we feel it's safe.